Hi, I'm Scott Haas. Thanks for joining me on Chef's Table. Today we talk with Chef Marc Vetri. Philadelphia is a city where the Italian-American influence has been strong for a century, both politically as well as gastronomically, and Marc Vetri has taken the food back home to its roots. Although he was raised in an Italian-American household with cuisine inspired by the south of Italy, Marc had a life-changing experience when he wound up in Bergamo, in the north of Italy. He then returned to Philadelphia with a head full of ideas that took Italian food to new heights. Now, Marc Vetri sits down with me on Chef's Table. Marc, thanks first of all for taking the time. I know you've got 4 restaurants, and so you must be pretty busy. I want to jump right in. So I'm struck
Let's do it.
I'm struck by the Italian-American traditions of cooking and conviviality, and its roots in Italian cooking, and its differences from what goes on in Italy. So when you first went to Italy, what were some of your first impressions when you grew up in Philadelphia in an Italian-American household?
Sure.
So you go to Italy, and suddenly it was
nothing like
here. So what were the differences?
The obvious answer is like they don't have like the meatballs and like the lasagna. I mean, they have the lasagna there, but they don't have it like the big weekend with all the lasagnas and the macaronis and the red sauce. So I went there and I'm not really thinking that that's what it was actually going to be like, but it was nothing like that at all. It was all about like the region and where they were. I went to northern Italy, so it was in the mountains, and it was just all about the meat that was actually raised there, the animals, the vegetables that they had there. They're near some lakes there, so we had the fish from the lakes there. I mean, it was all about where you were and the regional food there.
So when you, just out of curiosity, when you came back home with these recipes and these ideas and this change in how you saw things, and you started to cook for your family some of these things, what was their reaction?
No, they loved it, obviously, because
it's
such natural food.
Right.
But it was, they thought it was more like the Mediterranean food, more or less, which which it is, obviously. But they loved it.
They didn't feel insulted that you were not cooking the Italian?
No, not at all. No, I think that's when, this was in kind of the mid-90s and stuff. And I think that's when some restaurants started to kind of make themselves known with like real food from Italy. So there was the red sauce restaurants that been around for years, and they were all well known. And I love them too. That's what I was raised on. It's comfort food. It's easy, and I love it. But then there was this other style food, which was a little bit. I think the word is refined.
I was going to say refined.
There you go.
But I didn't want to put
words in my mouth.
No, but I didn't want to say refined because I felt like I don't want to show disrespect to the previous generation.
It's not an insult. I don't think it's an insult.
All right,
I just think it's just a different level.
It's a different level. It's a different generation too,
because
when you think about it, the red sauce restaurants that I grew up on in New York City, this was people off the boat. I mean, this was this was home cooking in restaurants.
Yeah. My father's father, he got here when he was, I think, 19 years old. Right off the boat, and they didn't have anything, so obviously they made just what was available.
So you've worked in Venice, you've worked in Bergamo. Where else have you worked in Italy?
I went down to the Rome area once. I also worked in Tuscany for like 3-4 months as well. But that's about it.
So I've been to Bergamo a couple of times, and I'm really struck by that as a choice. I mean, when I think about culinary centers in Italy, frankly, Bergamo doesn't come to mind.
There's a lot of restaurants in Bergamo.
Okay, so educate me. So why did you decide to work there?
So when I was working out in Los Angeles, I actually met a guy named Mr. Salvaggio. He owned a restaurant. It was called Valentino's out there. I actually met him when I was actually working for Wolfgang Puck.
He's a classy guy.
He is a very classy guy. So he used to stop in the restaurant a lot, and I sort of got to know him a little bit. And he was from Sicily, and my family's from there also. So we just kind of talk a little bit. So when I wanted to leave LA, I really wanted to go to Italy, and I went to see him. And he said that he actually knew of this restaurant that was in the Lombardy region, and they had a room and they had everything, you know, lined up for me, and I could, you know, just live there for a while. So I said, really, how do I do that? He wrote me a note, and he just said, hand this to the restaurant owner there. And that's it. And I was like, that's it? All right,
That's old
sure.
school. That's
old
great.
school. This is very old, yeah. I mean, the early 90s is not
That's
that
great.
old school, but
no, but still,
but
old
it was
school
really
style.
old. Yeah, exactly.
So you show up at Bergamo.
So I show up
You
at
have this
Bergamo.
letter, and like,
I have a knapsack on my back.
and
I
it
have
works
a letter.
perfectly. You're good to go.
I walk in the restaurant. I hand the letter to the owner.
Uh-huh.
He looks at me. He goes like this, you know, like almost to say like, not again. He sent me another, you know,
that's
without any
great.
notice, without any anything.
No notice.
Oh no, yeah. He walked me right up to the room. Leave your stuff here. And then I actually started to work that.
So I'm just trying to figure
that
this out in
evening.
a really pragmatic, concrete way. You're a kid from the States. You show up with this letter from this famous chef in Los Angeles. The guy shows you a room. So what's the first thing he has you do? He wants to know what you.
I'm just working. He's just
what's the
like go in
first
the
thing, like-
kitchen. God, I don't even.
I mean, like peeling carrots. Are you working on the line?
You
what are
know,
you doing?
your first week, you're almost kind of nervous to stick your hands on anything.
Of course.
So you just kind of roll with it. You meet the guys. You know, they're doing this. One guy's doing this. One guy's doing this, and you're like, hey, what are you doing? Do you need some help? You know, so you help one guy, and then you just roam, and then you eventually sort of find your.
They see what you can do.
Your way.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you think about this really powerful Italian experience you had, where you really immersed yourself in the food of
Sure.
the whole country, what did you add to that when you brought it back here based on your upbringing? I mean to say, you're not just doing it by rote, you're not doing paint by numbers, so you brought some of your upbringing and personality to this work. What do you think you brought to it?
I don't know what I brought to it, honestly. I mean, you know, when I went to Italy, like I learned the basics basically, and that's when I, you know, really made a nice foundation for myself, and then you learn off of that, you know. So I have that, and that's always there.
Well, here's what I'm
That's
wondering.
yeah.
Here's what I'm wondering. If you were, say, a French guy who went and did the 18-month stint in Italy,
Okay.
you'd come back and you'd bring it to Paris, and you
Sure.
might have some French tilt on it.
Sure.
So my question is, growing up as an Italian American in Philadelphia, was there any kind of tilt that you're aware of, like, oh yeah, so I grew up in this Italian American household. Is there something I'm doing here based on the way my mother, my grandmother, that I'm doing, that I'm adding to this food, or thinking about it differently than, say, the guys in Lombardy?
That's interesting, because when I was actually working here, I think that this was after that I got back from Italy. There was a lot of guys from Italy that actually, they opened up the restaurants here. They were all sort of making the food that they thought that Americans wanted, you know. So they would all have the salmon on the menu, and they'd all have this on the menu, and I'd be like, so I went to New York to open up a restaurant, and the guy there, the owner, he was actually from Rome. It was a restaurant called Bella Blue.
Uh-huh.
So I was the opening chef there, and you know, the owner was awesome, but he wanted me to always have a salmon on the menu, and always have like the Caesar salad on the menu. He's like, oh, the Americans love this, and I said, no, they don't love it. They want things that are actually from Italy, and you know, I mean, we used to argue about it a lot. But you know, he eventually saw it my way, thank God, and we started the whole roasted fishes.
So you're talking whole roasted fish, like branzino?
Whole roasted fish, yeah, yes, exactly like that. So we did that for the menu for a while, and everyone went like nuts out of their mind. And then after like the month of it, he was like, listen, we always have to have that on the menu. And then he let me sort of, you know, add other things like of the same ilk.
It's so interesting what you're saying, because it really helps me understand, frankly, how long ago this was. Because now you find branzino at, you know,
Everywhere.
at Whole Foods, and you can come home
Yeah,
and cook it. And
sure.
but back in the day, it was really kind of
It was
back then
really
it was kind
rare.
of original.
Nobody was just roasting whole fish just right in the oven.
But it's funny too, because going back to this question I asked you about Italian American, you know, you go to an Italian American household, people are cooking whole fish.
Yeah.
So it's not just in Italy either. It's really just showing respect to the product, that you can do something interesting with it.
Exactly.
You don't have to
yeah.
dumb it down.
Sure.
you know.
Yeah.
So each one of your restaurants has a different style. You've got Vetri,
Vetri, very good.
Alla Spina,
Alla Spina is this one.
Osteria, and Amis. Did I say it right?
Amis, yeah.
Amis. So how does Amis fit into that? I understand the the ideas behind the other three, but tell me a little bit about Amis.
Well, Amis, we always wanted to open. So I went to Rome with my wife once, and this is like 5-6 years ago. I had always really went to northern Italy, so I went to Rome, and obviously Rome's incredible, and we just kind of like walked into all of these little neighborhood things, and we just started eating and just walking and eating, and we fell in love with it. So then I really wanted to open up this like Roman style neighborhood restaurant. So we started doing some research for that. We all went over there again, and we ate all over the place at all of the highline spots, and then we also just went sort of walking around for new things. And then we opened this in 2010, I think. 2010, yeah. The impetus for that was me heading to Rome and just really loving it there.
I was going to say that I really love your focus. I meet a lot of chefs who open restaurants, and there's one guy, he's got a Japanese place, a French place, a Spanish place.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is up with that? I mean, so how did you achieve
we discussed that. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
We discussed that a lot. I have really spent my whole life now focusing on Italy, so lots of chefs, they're opening up the hamburger restaurant, and that's awesome, but that's not us, we really have to stay, I think, focused on Italy, and like maybe that's not the best thing for me to do, but I think it is.
Why wouldn't it be?
I don't know.
I think it's great.
Everyone says that you should look outside the box a little more. You should do this. You should do that. I don't know. I'm very like, this is what I do.
I think it makes total sense, sincerely, because I don't understand. I think it's hard enough to master a cuisine.
I think so too. But
and I don't, for the life of me, I don't.
You're not the majority, though.
I don't know. But a lot of the great chefs are focused. I mean, like Danielle does French restaurants. Carmelini does American, Italian, or Italian.
Sure.
So here's my question for you. How did you? This is a very general question, but go with it. See if you can do something with it. How did you achieve your focus, right? And how do you maintain it? I mean, I know you have a background as a musician, and that obviously involves tons of practice.
Sure.
But more specific to the issue of focus, which is so necessary in kitchens, how did you get it, and how do you maintain it?
I just think it's the way that I was actually raised. My father, I mean, he worked 6 days a week, and he always said to me, you have to work hard. You want to be your own boss. You want to be your own boss. You don't want to work for anybody. That always kind of stuck in my head. And then just watching the hours that he worked, I just always had a real good work ethic. And I think that's a lot of it, the work ethic part of it. And then it's like when I want something, it's this one thing, I'm always just like focused on it. There's like nothing else out there.
So you've always been that way?
Always been that way.
That's a trip.
Yeah, always been that way,
Because so much of what goes on in kitchens, a lot of people who don't work in kitchens think it's about being creative, but it's, in my opinion, it's about it's repetition.
It's repetition, and it's just lasting also. And it's just learning. I mean, you have to want to work the hours, and you have to love it also, and that's why when I didn't love something, it just never worked for me,
Yeah, I mean, if you're not passionate about working in a kitchen, It's not going to work out.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing I like more than working the line right now,
You're still working the line?
I still work the line some nights, yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I love it. I mean, it's all exciting, and they love it when I'm there.
I'm sure they do.
At least they say they do. Maybe
No, of course they do.
when I leave, they're like, God, thank God he left.
No, but it's inspiring,
It's awesome.
Yeah.
But you have to love it.
I wanted to ask you a little bit more about focus when it applies to actually what you're cooking. I mean, in terms of regionality. So you're focused in the kitchen. You've been like this your whole life, but I'm wondering how important is the idea of terroir? How important is the idea of land to your cooking? I mean, you talked about Lombardy and how important it was to the guys there. So can you say a little bit about that? I mean, you're in Philadelphia. There's not really a terroir to Philadelphia.
Well,
and maybe there is.
But yeah, there is. I mean,
okay,
you
tell me.
have Lancaster, which is full of animals and full of
gorgeous products.
Yeah. I mean, we get tons of stuff from the farmers up there.
Yep.
We'd love to get everything, but obviously that's not going to happen always. I mean, you have to really utilize the region that you live in now. I mean, nowadays with all of the discussion about energy and all that stuff, you really have to be, I think, a little bit more responsible than say, when I opened the restaurant back in 1998. So I mean, we use whatever we're able to locally.
At the same time, I think perhaps, that you're not defined by it in the same way that a guy from Piedmont is defined by it. So, you know what I mean? It must be somewhat liberating for you to work as a chef in the States, because if a guy's working, say, in Piedmont or in Venice, and the guy in Piedmont wants to serve, I don't know, a dish with oxtail that he had in a trattoria in Rome, his customers are going to say, I don't get it.
You know, not anymore. I don't
Oh, really?
think.
Okay.
Really. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about that anymore.
Tell me.
I mean, I think that I've eaten in a lot of restaurants in Italy now, and I think nowadays also they're using their land the most, but they go outside the box.
Oh, wow.
A lot. Food from Italy is, I think, more about the idea of it, using things very simply. You know, maybe some meat. I mean, again, with a little bit of olive oil, put a little bit of salt, and that's it. That's what Italy's all about.
Yep.
I think it's less about, though, the actual, the meat that's actually right off of the mountain there, or the vegetable that's right off of there. I think it's basically the idea.
Yeah. That's so interesting what you're saying just now about the salt and the pepper and the olive oil, because a lot of home cooks could learn from that approach. In his late years, Paul Klee, the painter, just started to draw very simple straight lines. Mm-hmm. And it was really hard to do that. It's much easier in some ways to put a lot of stuff on the plate.
Sure.
And it's instructive. I mean, can you say more about, let's say, how a home cook might learn to cook simply? I mean, what?
Well, I don't think not only
But you're a guy.
the home cook, my guys, they should learn that stuff. Yeah, I mean, when you make a line, you know, just like that guy, like there's nothing to hide behind.
That's right.
So when you make something that's like just the meat with a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of salt, and like just a vegetable with it, or like a sauce with it, there's nothing to hide behind. So it has to be exactly right. And that's the issue. I mean, a lot of these newer line cooks, and they're like loading all of these things on one plate, and then number one, you don't know what you're eating, because there's this sauce, and there's this foam, and there's this vegetable, and there's this meat, and there's this, and there's like 80 things on it. So after you ate it, you're like, well, that was okay. I liked some of it. I didn't like some of it. I mean, I don't like to cook like that.
Somebody once said to me, an Italian chef from Providence, I think it was from Al Forno, she said, I was always taught to use the best ingredients that you can afford to use and serve them. And it's all ingredient driven.
It's a great line.
Yeah, isn't it?
It's a great line.
So Piero Selvaggio. Piero Selvaggio.
Exactly.
Ecco. Once said to me years ago that he didn't understand why there wasn't a real Italian restaurant of depth in Boston.
Yeah.
And I think your emphasis on ingredients, similar to what Mario Batali is doing, is central to your achievement, which is what we just talked about. So I mean, the chef is important, of course. But the ingredients might be even more central. So what's your opinion of that? I mean,
well, we spend hours and hours and hours to source things. From the meat to the fish to the vegetables to everything. The chefs that are at the restaurant, that's like the half of their afternoon, just looking for good things. Meat arrives, this is nice, this isn't nice. They have to send this back. Sometimes the fish arrives, it's not always exactly right. So that's a major thing about the good restaurant.
Are there key ingredients central to Italian cooking the way there are for, say, like in Japan, kombu, the seaweed for the broth, it's central. Certain vinegars are essential to Japan. Are there central things to Italian cooking?
I mean, I don't think you have to have anything, but obviously, the olive oils, you have to have the Reggiano, the meats. That after that, you can just really use anything you want. Like, I don't like to be limited with like, oh, you have to have this on the menu because it's because they use that in Italy a lot.
It's not food, please.
No.
Right.
No. You just have to use the item in the right way.
Sure.
But that's what actually makes it from Italy, I think.
Let me ask you something. So what are some mistakes that home cooks make with Italian cooking?
Well, again, they start to, I think, to overload it with all sorts of things, when they don't have to. They can just like slice up some vegetables, put some olive oil on it, some rock salt, and that's it. And everyone will be like, "These are awesome. What did you do?" Like, I poured olive oil and I put some rock salt on. But it's but the item has to be awesome. Like if they're old or if they're not so nice or if they're wilted or something, then that won't work.
I go to Venice once a year and I go to the market Rialto every day.
it's a
And when you
great
buy
market.
the fruits, the guy turns, he goes, per oggi, for now or for later?
Yeah.
So per oggi means you're going to eat it for lunch today.
For today,
And that's
exactly,
it. And if you want it for tomorrow, don't buy this. You can't touch it, he picks it out.
Yeah.
But it's exactly what you're saying. The ingredient defines the dish.
Exactly. That's and I love that there too.
place is
It's a
insane.
great market.
It's one of my favorites.
Great market.
The last thing I wanted to ask you was, I had read somewhere that Mario Batali said that he thinks you have the best Italian restaurant in the country. So when you, I know what I mean.
Might have mentioned that one.
Right. So wait. So when you read that, what was your reaction?
You know, it was like, wow, but I mean, it was.
It's very nice.
I mean, he's obviously one of the leaders in the industry.
To be respected by your peer like that. It's like,
It is really. I mean, he didn't have to say that, and I think he went a little bit over.
I don't mean to
it.
embarrass
I think he had a little
you,
bit
but
of
it's so
wine first
nice.
before
Well,
he said
you
that.
think maybe, right?
But it's interesting, you know, him and like me and like the older guys. Like, I mean, I'm not old, but
Right.
we all sort of started out in like the late '80s, the early '90s. You know, there was no Food Network or anything like that, and I think the goal was like, if you're in the restaurant industry, you know, the highest thing that you could ever have is one day you're going to own a restaurant, you know, and that was it, you know. So we all have the same work ethic, and I think the same sort of respect for one another, you know, because that was it then. Nowadays, obviously, that's not the goal. The goal is to have like lots of restaurants, the book deal, the show, the this, the that, the other thing, you know. But that wasn't it back then,
Right,
you know. So
right.
we all just really had to love it, and we all just really had to work hard.
Right.
And I think that's what the
I
respect
understand.
is from.
Right. I mean, Thomas Keller said that, he said, we are the first generation, he's now 56, he said, we're the
Sure.
first generation to be made into celebrities. He said the generation before us in their 20s, he says, they're the first generation to act like celebrities.
Yes, exactly. That's interesting.
Isn't that great?
That's another good quote.
Yeah,
You have
isn't
some
that great?
good quotes.
Yeah, well, these are smart guys.
They are smart.
So listen, Marc, I really want to thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're crazy busy, but I really appreciate it. I've learned a lot.
Well, thanks
Appreciate
for
it.
having me.
Now, with 4 restaurants, from formal to informal, Marc remains restless, open to new ideas, and versatile in his cooking. Certainly, his spontaneous approach to cooking is related to an Italian openness. No country is better able to embrace the contradictions implicit in being alive. On the next Chef's Table, I'll sit down with Chef Dave Pasternak at Esca. Pasternak, over the past year, has been spending lots of time in his business partner Mario Batali's megastore, Italy. He'll talk about his passion for seafood, and you'll hear why people think of him as the fish whisperer. That and more on the next Chef's Table.